So we're all familiar with the AT-ST, the massive two-legged walker utilized by the Empire during battles like the Battle of Hoth and the Battle of Endor, but many of us kind of overlook its predecessors. So today we're going to talk about one of those predecessors, and let's discuss the AT-DP, the direct predecessor to the AT-ST. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. So, the AT-DP played a prominent role in shows like Rebels, where it served as a scout vehicle and a lighter heavy armored unit within Imperial forces, and I figured today we should talk about this vehicle, its history, its design, how it was used, and the impact it had on the Empire, particularly in the early days of the Empire. So, let's just dive right in, the way we start all of these, with the numbers. Like many other walkers, the AT-DP was designed by Kuat Drive Yards and was 11.6 meters tall, which is a little bit taller than an AT-ST and far smaller than something like an AT-AT, which is understandable and pretty obvious. But at a top speed of 90 kilometers per hour, it could cover ground quickly, making it very threatening, especially in an open battlefield where it can really put that speed to use. Now, the armament is where it's a little bit lacking. The only thing this walker is armed with is an MAAD-38 heavy laser cannon, which is a very powerful weapon, but it is a single turreted laser cannon mounted beneath the head of the vehicle, and if that cannon is disabled, the walker's basically defenseless. So it's fairly easy to disable these vehicles. On top of that, that cannon can only fire forward, meaning the walker has to turn around if it wants to use it against targets that are behind the vehicle, giving them a pretty large blind spot. So this walker was developed likely during the Clone Wars, as it was introduced in 18 BBY, the same year the war ended, or right around that time. It was deployed first on backwater worlds far away from the Imperial capital and far away from the core. These worlds were dealing with uprisings and insurrections in the early days of the Empire, so the deployment of these walkers made perfect sense. In fact, that's where they ended up fitting in nicely, at least for the beginning half of their career, being a prominent enforcement tool on worlds across the galaxy, whether they were significant or not. But as the age of the Empire dragged on, and newer, more advanced, and more capable walkers came into service, things like the AT-ST, the AT-DP was pushed into a more peripheral role, serving in places like Imperial academies as a training walker or as security on more backwater worlds that were less crucial to Imperial operations. Now, that being said, they did still find their way into major battles, particularly in the days prior to the Battle of Scarif. We see them a lot, like I mentioned, on Lothal and Star Wars Rebels, and across that show in general. They played a prominent role in several early Imperial offensives in the early days of the Empire, most notably their invasion of Mon Cala, where they played a role in the Battle of Dak City. They were heavily used by the Lothal garrison, which many of us are familiar with. In fact, that's likely where most of us have seen these walkers before. And they played a pretty big role in the Mandalorian Civil War, specifically the Mandalorian Civil War that occurred during the Age of the Empire. Also depicted in Rebels. After that, they seemed to fall off, ultimately being replaced by the AT-ST, a smaller and far more capable walker with a wider array of weapons, so it's understandable why they made that switch. Still, it's likely that in the backwater sections of the galaxy, these walkers were still a very prominent part of Imperial enforcement tactics, and, well, I mean, by the time we're looking at the original trilogy, we're looking at the most important events in galactic history. I'm sure these walkers were still all over the place on worlds that were not the center of attention for the Galactic Empire. There's one more tidbit I'd like to throw out there about this walker, and this is something that Rebels actually does a lot, but this walker is a great example of it. It is actually based off of original Ralph McQuarrie concept art for the AT-ST. And while it is a different vehicle, it's nice to see that original concept art still making it into a finished product as an element of the Star Wars universe. At the end of the day, I think the AT-DP is a really cool-looking walker, even if it does have some pretty glaring tactical disadvantages from its single weapon system to its large blind spots. It's still a pretty cool-looking vehicle and really does fit with the Imperial aesthetic and does fill a gap if AT-STs are unavailable. That being said, if you'd like to learn more about the AT-ST, which did ultimately come along to replace it, I'll leave a link up here to my video on that. And I'd like you to let me know down in the comments whether you think it makes sense to have even fielded this vehicle. After all, it has a single weapon system and a fairly limited range of visibility. Do you think the Empire would have been better off just developing a different interim with more weapons, or do you think it makes sense to have a single heavy cannon on a walker and have that be a dedicated platform? And if you have anything else you'd like to see me cover in Star Wars or anywhere else in science fiction, you can let me know down below in the comments. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.